Before I start this video, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have consistently commented on the videos here. It's the engagement that makes a huge difference, and the channel finally has 10,000 subscribers, which took about 2 years and 200 videos to reach, so I want to thank everybody. The Lady of the Hills, identified as LamDuan Armitage. The case comes to us from the UK. Before I dig in, I want to say I know a lot of subscribers live in other countries. If you have cases you would like to submit, please email them to me at the email address found below this video. Sometimes I'm slow, but I will always respond. On September 20th, 2004, a man was out walking on Pennine Way, which is between Pennigent and Horton in Ribblesdale. It wasn't even an isolated area. It was an area that is often traveled by people. The man stopped to take a photograph by a stream, not realizing that in the back of the photo, a woman could be seen by the rock. And this was within the stream that was named Selgilbeck. It was likely the woman had been there for 3 weeks. Her COD hadn't been discovered, so no one was able to tell what had happened. She was wearing only green socks and a wedding ring. A ripped bra was hanging from one arm. Law enforcement tried really hard to discover who she was. They felt she may have been from Southeast Asia, but of course, that is just ancestry. She could be a foreign national or a UK resident. They knew she was of medium build and had a gap in her lower teeth. They also knew she'd given birth to a child in the past. As they began working the case, they began to believe she was what they referred to as a Thai bride. The community paid for a funeral and a headstone, which always deserves inclusion in these cases because the kindness of people towards someone without a name is always pretty amazing. They say that they felt a responsibility toward the woman and that they wanted her to have a place that her family could go to should she ever get traced. For them, the kindness was to her family in addition to a nameless woman. More than 40 people would attend her funeral. The police would go on to question those who had been walking in the area in hopes that someone might have known or seen something. They even went to a house in the area, in the local village, looking for witnesses. It would be determined that the woman had passed between September 13th, 2004 to August 31st, 2004. It was later called an unexplained death rather than suspicious or foul play. The isotope test pointed to Singapore, Thailand, or Vietnam. They believed she'd lived in the UK for about 2 years. This was a big complication if, for no other reason other than people missing her might live in another country and speak another language. This is eventually what led to her being referred to as the Thai bride. It also suggests she may have been at a higher risk for someone taking advantage of her or hurting her, should that be true. Testing done on her hair would narrow down her location to having lived in a rural community in North Lancashire or the South Cumbria areas of the United Kingdom. Her case was shown in a British version of Crime Watch in 2004. An inquest would be held in May of 2007, determining, essentially, that they could not determine her COD. Sorry for the coded words. Again, it's hard to know exactly what YouTube will penalize me for, so I've been trying to be more cautious. They did, however, rule out drowning, which I would think makes it more suspicious given where she was found. That said, it also was just a small stream, as evidenced in the photograph here. The water in that spot comes out of what is described as a small cave. In early 2019, LamDuan's family in Thailand would come forward to say that they believed the Lady of the Hills was actually their missing daughter, LamDuan Armitage. DNA testing was done on her remains and compared to the family, eventually concluding that they were in fact correct. After 15 years, they had finally found their missing daughter. Once they had her name, authorities would discover that Lam had been married once prior to meeting the man she was married to when she disappeared. She eventually met and married British lecturer David Armitage when Armitage was living in the northern Thai city, Chiang Mai. He had moved there to teach English around the time that LamDuan had moved there to find a job, after her first marriage fell apart. Lam had been living in a small village, but she had hopes of finding better employment options and a life for the child she now needed to support. She found a job working part-time in a restaurant, and that was where she met Armitage. The couple didn't date very long before they got married. They would tie the knot in Thailand in January of 1991. About 6 months later, the two would move with Lam's son from her prior marriage to Portsmouth in the UK. Armitage would go on to have a male child in February of 1992. Around 1994, their marriage began to struggle as they were trying to have another child, and it wasn't happening. There was the added stressor of the fact she was getting pregnant, but she would have miscarriages. They would eventually conceive a daughter in May of 1999. But by then, the marriage was pretty unhappy, and it stayed that way. According to Lam's parents, she sent a letter home to them saying she wanted to leave her husband, but that she feared a custody battle over her children. She couldn't take it anymore, though, and she returned home to Thailand, leaving her children behind. She stayed there for a month in 2004. It's not clear why she left them behind, but likely her husband either refused to allow her to take them or she was in fear of a legal response. But she missed her kids and couldn't take it, and after that month returned home. But she would tell her mother in a letter that she felt trapped. Her marriage eventually reached another breaking point. She would speak to her parents on the phone once a week, most weeks, and on her last call home, she would say she wanted to come back to Thailand permanently with the children, but that she doesn't have enough money yet to do so. That was the last conversation they ever had. No phone calls would happen after this, and no more letters were received. Her parents would try to reach her by phone, but the phone had already been shut off. They would report her missing to the police in Thailand after 4 weeks. The missing persons report would eventually make its way to the UK. Her husband was approached by the police once his wife was reported missing. It appears he refused to answer any questions, simply insisting that his wife move back to Thailand. He doesn't know where she is, and he wants them to leave him alone. He also said he would not be discussing his marital problems with the police. He said the same thing to her parents. The police would approach her husband once again after she was identified by DNA, saying that he knew nothing of her passing, and he had nothing to do with it. This was all complicated by the fact that her COD was never found, so it's hard to prove he even did anything to her. One shocking quote appears to say the quiet part out loud, disclosing what her husband feels about the loss of his wife. He would tell a newspaper, quoted as saying, "I'm bored with it all," and then continue on to say, "I just want to go on with work." He would do his best to relay that he was unconcerned about the mother of his children and whatever led to her being unidentified for 15 years. At some point after she was identified, he moved back to and was living in Thailand. He did share some concerns publicly, but not for the loss of his wife. Rather, the concern was for himself and the fact that police in the UK have questioned him at all. He relayed that he was angry that they were treating him with anything other than pity as a man who'd lost his wife. He would say that they should have been treating him as a bereaved husband. He continued on to say that if the police want to formally speak to me, I'll of course cooperate, saying I made that very clear to the British Embassy. My position is that I have nothing to hide, so why wouldn't I talk to them? Except it appears that is exactly what he did, even moving away from the UK, possibly to avoid this. Her parents, for their part, have been very clear that they believe she met with foul play and that her husband is behind it. He has made himself out to be a victim of her family and of the British police. He would say that a man from the British Embassy contacted him in Thailand to say that the embassy was concerned regarding his wife's passing, saying that they were afraid that her family would come and try to hurt him. There's no indication if this conversation actually took place. In 2023, British law enforcement decided to take him up on his offer that he made to the British Embassy. After avoiding them, they would fly all the way to Thailand to talk to David Armitage, telling him that they want to question him. Probably not a huge surprise to anyone, but Mr. Bored by it all refused to speak to the police. He wouldn't even take the time to share the pain and bereavement he feels at the loss of his wife, saying nothing at all. But as suspicious as this is, they haven't been able to obtain any proof that he did anything to his wife. A wife that, I might add, he did not bother to report missing. Lam's daughter currently lives with her father in Thailand. Her son lives in China, where he works as a teacher. Her oldest son lives in the UK. LamDuan Armitage went unidentified for 14 years. Had she lived, she would be 54 today. As always, thank you so much for watching. The current goal for the channel is 20,000 subscribers. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Thank you so much to everybody commenting. Even with just an emoji, it really has made a big difference. Without it, there isn't a channel, so thank you guys so much. Take care of yourselves and each other.